Good afternoon. How's everyone doing? It's warm in here, isn't it? Yeah. Just like the labor temple we all know. There's two settings to the heating system in this building. On and off. That's right. All right, I'm Jonathan Rosenblum. I'm really glad to be here and really glad to have served on the committee that helped put together this event. I am a rank-and-file member of the UAW Local 1981, the National Writers Union, and I'm also, many of you know, I was involved in the CTAC campaign, the original Fight for 15 victory in this country, wrote a book about it, Beyond $15, Immigrant Workers, Faith Activists, and the Revival of the Labor Movement. Some of you are in that book explicitly, or at least your fingerprints are, in the history that we made a few years ago. And currently I work as a community organizer with Seattle City Council member Kshama Sawant. I was asked to organize a panel on the lessons of 1919 for 2019 and beyond. And the title of the workshop here, of the panel discussion, is When We Fight, We Win: How Workers Are Organizing in 2019 and Beyond. And we have a number of people I'll introduce briefly, and then we'll come back to them in just a few minutes. First of all, to my immediate left, Jenny Craig, strike leader from West Virginia. I think she shovels a foot of snow before breakfast, sisters and brothers. So, yeah, this was easy though, right, the weather? Yeah. Great. We have Rosemary Alegria, who is a leader of this historic fight at the Marriott. And Manny, who is a Unite Here organizer and is here to help translate, and by the way, helped organize at Facebook just recently in South Lake Union. Unfortunately, not with us here this afternoon is Takele Gubina. Some of you know Takele. He was a rank-and-file worker at the airport, helped to lead that fight in 2013, and is now a Teamsters union rep and has been very involved in the East African community's fight in the city of SeaTac to fight back against gentrification. And it's a broad fight that involves unions and a lot of other organizations. He is unable to get out of SeaTac today because of the snow and sends his regrets. But he'll be here in spirit, and if we do another workshop, he'll certainly be part of it. Now, a strike is about workers exercising their power. It's about the collective withdrawal of labor power by workers to force an economic or political concession, either by an employer, by a group of employers, or by a political entity. And the strike has the potential not just to change the wages and working conditions of a group of workers, but indeed to change the balance of forces at a workplace, in the community, and indeed throughout society. Now, we're very proud of the strikes we've had here recently, and many of you have probably seen the slide deck that we had earlier that was put together by Yasmin Ahmed. Is she here in the room? Anyway, great slide deck of recent strikes, including the UAW, academic student employees who struck for a day in May. You can give them an applause. The operating engineers who struck earlier this year in Seattle, yes. Teamsters, Seattle school bus drivers who struck 1 year ago this week. School teachers, not just in Seattle, but throughout the region, who struck over the last couple of years, major strikes. Cement truck drivers. Who am I missing? I'm missing one. This was not a formal strike, but I think we really need to give a hand to the federal workers who in the last few weeks very quietly began engaging in concerted sick-outs at airports and other federal work sites. And you know, when those air traffic controllers on the East Coast decided on day 35 of the Trump shutdown that they were not going to work, within hours the political establishment found a solution.
That's right.
So let's not forget them too. David, do you have another one to add?
Operating engineers.
Operating engineers, yes. Prov Home Care and Hospice, right? Yes. Great. Fast food workers, absolutely. And more. Now, I was reminded before we started this afternoon that there was a report out by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics that noted that 2018 had the most major strikes in this country in the last decade, and that is reason to applaud. But I want to give you some context to it. Let's get the first slide up. These are the number of strikes by decade in the United States. In fact, in the 1950s and 60s into the 70s, there were close to 200, 300, 400 major strikes every year. So we should certainly say, good that there were 20 major strikes in the last year, but we have a ways to go in this country. And in fact, the major drop-off, if you look at the data, is in 1981. People remember what happened then? PATCO, that's right. So PATCO was not just the strike breaking that Reagan did in 1981, was not just a blow against the air traffic controllers. It was a strike against it was a blow against the whole working class. And I'm hoping that with the way federal workers reacted during the shutdown recently, it's a demonstration that we're forgetting the PATCO nightmare and we're getting back into the groove of exercising our strike power. Now, there are many ways to talk about why we have to strike and the challenges we face. And I'm not going to go through all the data, which many of you are quite familiar with, but I want to just show you one slide that says this is our problem in Seattle today. On the left, you see the Amazon spheres. How many people have anybody been in the spheres? These are 3 geodesic domes that Jeff Bezos and Amazon executives decided to build in downtown Seattle at the cost of tens of millions of dollars to house thousands of exotic trees and plants in temperature-controlled environments. And if you work for Amazon, you can go there, and I guess the hoi polloi are allowed in every week, one day. But the fact is that in the world of Jeff Bezos and the Amazon executives and the executives of Facebook, these trees have more rights to a home in Seattle, out of the weather, than other working class brothers and sisters, the 12,000 who do not have homes and are sleeping on the streets. And that is a picture on the right from Dearborn Avenue just this morning. That is the shame of this economy, of this city that we live in, where we have such tremendous wealth that is concentrated in the hands of so few, and such destitution that working class people are facing. This disparity is not unintentional. It's not a mistake of the capitalist system. It's a logical outcome of it. And so when we think about the 1919 strike, which was not just a strike for shipyard workers to get better pay, it was a strike about realigning power. It was a strike about priorities as a society. The features of it were, that we want to lift up in this next session, is that the strike encompassed more than just union members. It was a strike of the community. And secondly, that it was an illegal strike, as Janet noted at the end of the interlude, that we have to break laws, that in 1919 workers lacked the legal right to go on strike and engaged in collective actions that circumvented the law, just like you're going to hear from these panelists about how they've been involved in circumventing broken laws today. And today, with political and economic forces arrayed against working people, we see the need to fight these, wage these fights that are community-wide, and also deploy tactics that circumvent the broken laws, that ignore strike bans, that engage in mass rallies and marches, and that lead to takeovers of legislative chambers and so on. Now, there's one thing I want to just note, being here in this hall today. Many of you may remember, if you were here about 20, 25 years ago, this wall needed to get repainted. And the head of the Labor Council at the time, Ron Judd, commissioned the Painters Union to put together the seal of the King County Labor Council and the lettering that you have up above. And I remember coming in here when the painter was midway through that fourth word at the top. And people were saying, now, wait a minute. It's supposed to be council, right? We're the King County Labor Council. And Judd came down and said, no, this is the community. That the council is part of the community, but this is a hall for all working class people in this county. And I think that's a very significant statement, to think about ourselves as not just, there's not union and non-union, there's all of us in the working class fighting together as a community. So I would like Jenny and Rosemary to talk a little bit now about how do you take that feeling, that thought about what the community means in the context of the struggles you've been involved in. What were the lessons of your fight? And then we'll get to where do we go from here. I'll first have Jenny speak.
Hello, Seattle. Thank you for having me. Thank you to Jonathan for inviting me and for his hospitality and for his family's hospitality last evening and a delicious dinner. And the Harry Bridges Center, University of Washington, for allowing me to come. This is not something I do. It's the first time I've ever flown. In addition to being a special ed teacher, my husband and I operate his family Black Angus cattle farm, so I don't often get the chance to leave West Virginia. And like I said, I've never flown before, but I am so blessed and honored to be here and to be asked to be here. Jonathan pointed out something that many of us came to the realization for the very first time. West Virginia has a really rich history of unionism. If you don't know anything about the West Virginia mine wars, watch any of the documentaries. They're absolutely fascinating, and we don't talk about them enough. In fact, in our own public schools in West Virginia, we don't talk about them or the labor movement, I feel by design. But there's an amazing museum in Matewan that I was able to visit this summer. But West Virginia has a rich history of unionism, and so does the northern part of the state where I'm from. And we have so many diverse unions that are present and active in our community, but so many of us teachers and so many of us in general didn't know or identify with the struggles of trade and labor unions until our time of strike. And so the work stoppage brought out an immense showing of support from various unions. Before the 9-day strike, in fact, there were wildcat actions in the southern part of our state, in the southern coal fields. Those people were so brave in what they did. And in fact, a UMWA member of their local in Mingo County showed up at a Board of Education meeting, and he said, I think you guys should go on strike. And so those partnerships and the community saying to teachers and to school workers and to saying to public education, we're with you, was the first time many of us had that realization that we all are one community, that we're all workers. And so as this wildcat action happened, there were rumblings that sort of spread throughout the state and eventually up to the northern panhandle where I lived. And so we began to organize very quickly. And what we found out when we were organizing informational picketing, building the power to walk out ourselves, to join in an eventual strike, is that our local CLC and our local trade and labor unions came out and joined us on the picket lines. And parents were coming out and asking questions. And so it was this realization for the very first time that we all are community, that we all are the union. And we say that all the time now, and it sounds really corny because we say it so often. In fact, we formed a caucus within our union directly after the strike to build on that grassroots momentum that we are the union, rank and file really are. And so there was this moment that changed me in all of this. Drove to our capital in Charleston, West Virginia, for a rally that was hosted by our brothers and sisters in labor. And converging on the Capitol, I didn't know what to expect. I shamefully had never been in our Capitol building. I had never participated actively in sitting in the legislative process. And so converging on the Capitol and seeing it just a sea of red and it was absolutely cold January day, and seeing that it was pouring down rain and red ponchos and umbrellas and just thousands of people gathering on our Capitol steps and standing there shoulder to shoulder, very tight in all this mud, because we took over and we were all in the grass in the area around the Capitol, listening to the speakers. And at the very end, by this point it was pouring down rain. At the very end, Levi Allen, who is the International Secretary and Treasurer of the UMWA, spoke, and he opened up with this: brothers and sisters. And that was the first time I realized that we all are the same. We all are in this community, that we all are brothers and sisters, and I never had used that word and term before in our own, in our locals and our unions. And so that was just a real turning point for us. And so then, filled with this new found idea of what community and what a union is, truly all members of the community and all workers, going back to our local communities and realizing that we needed to organize very quickly, and that we needed to get parent and community support and make them understand what we're doing and why we're fighting for it, and what that meant for public education. And so when we did eventually go on strike, we had already built all of those relationships within our community and talking to our parents. I teach in the middle school that I went to and I grew up in, but I don't live in that community anymore. And so, it's a very poor community where I grew up and where I teach in West Virginia, like most of West Virginia really is. But a lot of teachers don't live in the communities that they teach in. And so one of the things that we did to organize to help our community through this was organize food pantries, centralized locations for our students to still be able to eat. And so that was a really powerful moment, because we were able to go, and in our case it was a church, my church, which is right behind the school that I teach at, and it's right in between mine and an elementary school. And so having parents come in and sitting and sharing a meal with them is different than sitting across the table from them at a parent-teacher conference. I'm going to get emotional. Just being there and realizing that we do all have differences, but our one common goal is we're fighting against the system, this institution that is unfair for all of us. And to have parents and to have so many diverse people converge and to realize that and to share a meal together was just absolutely incredible. And it was this turning point in our community that we needed later. And one of the questions we'll get to later is about the pushback. But building these alliances in our communities with our unions, in our Central Labor Council, and our parents and our community was absolutely necessary for the sustained fight that we had for 9 days after we were implored to go back, not just by some of our boards of education and by some of the minority groups in our minority, like the 1%ers in our community that didn't understand our fight. It was important that we built those alliances, and it helped us win a sustained fight and stay out for the 9 days that we needed to ensure that we moved beyond our battle and that we continued the movement.
Great. We'll come back to you. Thanks. That was really wonderful, Jenny, and we're going to hear more from her in just a moment, but I want to ask Rosemary the question as well about, in your struggle, how did you define community? And I just want to note, many of us walked the picket line at the Westin this past summer, but it's important to remember this was not a Seattle alone fight. This was a struggle of 8,000 members of Unite here in 8 different cities. And in fact, in every city except Seattle, workers went on strike, in some cases for up to 2 months. And in Seattle, the workers didn't have to strike, but they did many other things, and many allies went to jail for civil disobedience as a result of the fight. But it was part of a big fight that spanned all the way from Hawaii to Boston. So it was part of a national fight against a global corporation. And in that context, Rosemary, tell us a little bit about how you saw the community and the role of the community in the struggle.
Buenas tardes a cada uno de ustedes.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Gracias por estar aquí, por la invitación que he recibido. Sabemos que está nevando, pero aquí estamos.
Thank you for coming here today, and thank you for the invitation. And despite there being snow, we're all here together, and I'm really happy about that.
Quiero recalcar algo de lo que dijo Jonathan antes
I just want to just emphasize something that Jonathan had shared earlier
con respecto a estas plantas.
in regards to the plants that are in these orbs here.
Es cierto que muchas veces se puede valorar los derechos de algo material mucho más que los derechos de una persona.
It's very clear and apparent that that we can emphasize the rights of certain material objects over those of our fellow humans and fellow neighbors.
Eso fue lo que me motivó a mí como persona a poder tal vez estar sentada aquí hoy.
That's what motivated me to do something like this, to sit down and share with you my struggle.
La comunidad, como me preguntó Jonathan, para mí somos cada uno de los que estamos aquí.
The community, as Jonathan put it, and how I'm framing it, is all of us together.
Porque podemos aportar de alguna manera un granito de arena
Because each of us can hold a grain of sand
para lograr grandes cosas
to win big things and to accomplish big things
si trabajamos juntos.
if we work together.
2018 para mí fue un año de muchos retos.
2018 was a year filled with lots of goals and accomplishments.
Porque sentía mucho temor en primer lugar a hablar en público.
Because, to be honest, I'm very scared of public speaking in general.
Pero gracias a Dios
But thanks to God,
me está ayudando, tengo nervios ahorita,
it's helping me right now. I'm feeling a little nervous right now,
pero quiero contarles mi experiencia.
but I want to share with you my experience and my story.
Qué importante fue para mí trabajar en unidad.
It was so, it's okay.
Qué importante fue para mí trabajar en unidad, los trabajadores, la unión y la comunidad.
It felt very important for me to see and to feel, myself and my coworkers, the union staff and fellow community members joined together in the same fight.
Nunca pensé que a través de esto yo iba a perder un poco el temor de hablar en público.
I never thought I would have lost my fear of speaking, but because of what we were able to accomplish, I've been able to do that.
Antes tal vez no estaba interesada en los derechos que yo tenía como trabajadora de housekeeper.
Before, I didn't realize the importance of my rights as a housekeeper, as a worker in a hotel.
Cuando me enteré que la ley I-124 fue dada aquí en Seattle y que tenía muchos beneficios para los trabajadores de hoteles, fue cuando me motivé a saber y conocer algo más de esta ley.
When we were starting to work on I-124, that was when I started realizing that this is something important for me to be involved in, to be invested in, and to be working on.
Así que la unión me llamó y me dijo si quería ser parte de esto.
And so I got a call from my organizer asking if I would be involved in this, and I was very willing to be a part of it.
De participar en diferentes reuniones con la ciudad,
To participate in meetings with city government officials,
de poder ir hasta Londres, a poder expresar mi voz con personas que yo no conocía.
to go all the way to London to share my experience with folks who have a lot of power within Marriott.
Con una sola razón,
with one reason, for one reason,
de que nuestras voces como trabajadores sean escuchadas.
that our voices as workers be heard.
Gracias. No les niego que había temor
I won't deny that I had a lot of fear going into that.
por las represalias. ¿Represalias? Como que ellos pudieran hacer algo a mí.
Oh, she was afraid of any possible retaliation from these individuals, from these powerful folks.
Sí sentía eso, pero me decidí y me puse a pensar y dije, voy a hacerlo, voy a ir y quiero saber qué trae esta ley 124 para mí como trabajadora.
And so, looking at what is going on for myself and my fellow coworkers, and looking at what benefits I-124 has for so many workers, I decided it made sense for me to continue on and to share my experiences with these folks.
La unión tenía un plan que realizar y todos colaboramos para que ese plan se cumpliera.
So there was a plan that was in place, and together as workers we were able to accomplish this one goal.
Había mucho trabajo que hacer, pero yo a la vez pensaba, no estamos solos, tenemos el respaldo y el apoyo de la comunidad.
And, while it was difficult, I knew that we had the support of the community and of many members from the community.
Cuando hacíamos los reales afuera del hotel Westin,
When we were doing rallies outside of the Westin,
conocí a muchos de ellos.
I met a lot of community members.
Me acuerdo de una senadora
I remember a senator
que estaba con su cartel
was with her little sign or picket sign
bajo este lema.
with this shirt, with this message on
Un
it.
trabajo es suficiente.
One job should be
Un
enough.
trabajo es suficiente.
One job should be enough.
El lugar donde trabajo es el Westin Hotel.
The place I work is the Westin Hotel.
Muchos de mis compañeros tienen 2 o 3 trabajos.
Many of my coworkers have 2 to 3 jobs.
Una de mis compañeras quería obtener su casa.
One of my coworkers was looking to buy a home.
Ella se llama Filega.
Her name is Filega.
Ella me contó su experiencia,
She shared with me her experience,
que gracias a este proyecto que se fue realizado en el 2018,
and because of this plan that we had in 2018,
gracias a lo que logramos las comunidades, la unión y los trabajadores,
and thanks to community members, the union, and the workers all standing up together,
ella pudo dejar el otro trabajo.
she was able to leave one of her jobs.
Solo está trabajando en Westin.
She's only working at the Westin now.
Cuando supimos que las 7 ciudades, porque con Seattle éramos 8 ciudades que a la vez estábamos peleando para ganar la nueva contratación,
As was mentioned earlier, there were 8 cities that were involved in this national campaign for one job should be enough, Seattle being one of them, and then 7 others.
hicimos una votación para que todos los trabajadores participaran y pudieran decir sí a la huelga.
And we did a strike vote, and overwhelmingly all of us agreed that it was the right move and the right choice to go on strike.
No queríamos, claro, que hubiera huelga.
Initially, we didn't want there to be a strike.
Nuestro deseo era que ellos entendieran y comprendieran las razones por las cuales estamos peleando por nuestros derechos.
We hoped that they would understand why we were fighting for our own rights.
Pero si tuviéramos que hacer huelga, íbamos a hacerlo.
But if it had to be done, then it was going to be done, and it was done.
Así es que hicimos unas votaciones y ganamos. La mayoría aceptó y dijo sí.
And when we took on the strike vote, we overwhelmingly won a majority of folks who wanted to go on strike.
También hubieron algunas negativas de parte de algunos compañeros.
And of course, there's always going to be negative friends of ours who may not want to do it.
Muchos de nosotros somos inmigrantes.
Many of us are immigrants.
Tengo compañeros de Rusia, filipinos, chinos, vietnamitas.
A lot of my coworkers come from different parts like Russia, China, Vietnam, you name it.
Y si bien es cierto, no hablamos el mismo idioma,
And even though we don't speak the same language,
pero teníamos que hacer algo nosotros como líderes para poder convencer a ellos de que algo que estábamos luchando iba a traer victoria.
and we knew as leaders within our hotel that the only way that these folks were going to listen is if we made them listen.
Porque ese derecho era para cada uno de nosotros.
Because that right is for everyone to share in.
No llegamos a la huelga.
We ourselves did not go on strike.
Mr. Kevin, el representante del Hotel Westin,
One of the representatives from the Westin Hotel
aceptó las propuestas de la nueva contratación.
accepted all of our proposals for our contract.
Pero la unión tenía un plan si es que íbamos a ir a huelga, y lo que me alegró más es que la comunidad iba a proveer de todas las cosas, de parte de las cosas que íbamos a tener durante la huelga.
And despite not actually going on strike, there was a very well executed plan that we had come to realize, and with the support of the community, we knew that we were going to be fully supported during that time of hardship.
Lo que yo aprendí como experiencia, el valor que yo me llevo de esta experiencia, es que aprendí a expresarme.
One of the valuable lessons I learned throughout this experience and through seeing the support of the community is to share my voice and to be vocal.
Porque creo que tengo el mismo derecho que tiene el gerente, el supervisor y los managers.
Because I have the same rights as the general manager, the supervisors, everyone else who works there with me.
Y por último, creo que trabajar en equipo es lo mejor.
And finally, one other lesson to take away from that experience is the real value of teamwork.
Trabajamos en equipo y pudimos lograr las propuestas de la nueva contratación en Westin Hotel. Estamos muy animados todos. Queremos seguir trabajando juntos para lograr muchas cosas más.
Throughout that building of teamwork, we've also been actively been working as a team inside of the shop, and that has proven to be very effective.
Gracias a cada uno de ustedes.
Thank you to everyone here.
Thank you, Rosemary. So, what we'd like to hear from you a little bit is about this question of how you move people from inaction to action. And it's not enough for conditions to be horrible to get people to go on strike. That oftentimes fear keeps workers back. And so I'm wondering if each of you could describe an experience or a moment when you yourself or you saw your coworkers break through that fear and move into action.
That is, as an organizer, the biggest question. How do you move from inaction to action, and how do you keep that momentum going? And I don't know that I have one single answer, but to answer the question of how people had moved from fear to a place of action. So our strike was very organic in the fact that it was totally rank and file. We didn't ask, we didn't wait to be told by leadership of either of the unions. So there are 3 unions, WVEA, which is NEA, AFT, American Federation of Teachers, and our Service Personnel Union. And so we didn't wait for that leadership to tell us what to do. And so there were a group of people who have now become best friends with. We have formed a caucus within our union who made a Facebook page called Public Employees United, because we all public employees were under the same insurance program that has absolutely faced detrimental cuts and premium increases. And so it exploded by people sharing their personal stories. So oftentimes you have this fear that if you fight back, you're wrong. And so when people were sharing their stories and saying, I have to pay this much for insulin, my insulin went from this to this, and I have $5 left in my account, oh, me too, well, this is my story, well, this is my story, the shame goes away. And you realize that it's not you, it's not your fault, it's the system that fails you. And so that was a catalyst for that removal of the fear, that taking away of the shame that for whatever reason, maybe I didn't save enough, maybe most teachers I know have 2 jobs, realizing that that's not your fault, it's the system, moving past that, and then really, the moment that the wildcat strike started happening, other people in the state, as far as north as that I live, we were one of the last to really know what was going on and join it. But seeing that and watching videos of them shutting down their schools and converging on the Capitol and showing up in the halls and chanting the chant 55 strong. And just 55 strong, and just hearing that echo in these marble chambers that were never the people's house really throughout our history, that was the moment for me. And then all of the Facebook Live videos showing everyone in my local and realizing that we weren't going to wait to be told what to do. We were going to start organizing now, and we were going to start getting ready. That was really that moment. Hearing those chants echoing in these halls, these marble halls that really, for the first time ever, were the people's house, helped move people from fear to the realization that we can really have something. We could really have power here if we only capitalize on it, take hold of it, and used it to our advantage to fight for public education.
Great. Thanks, Jenny. And Rosemary, you and your coworkers took on the Marriott Corporation, one of the largest global companies in the hospitality industry, if not the largest. What gave you the idea that you could possibly take this giant on and win?
Como vuelvo a repetir, creo que trabajar unidos trae mucha fortaleza.
As I've said before, working together builds and creates a lot of strength.
Pero había una negativa.
But there was one negative person in my shop.
Recuerdo que algunos compañeros me decían, yo no voy a hacer huelga, Rosemary, yo no voy a firmar.
I remember some of my coworkers saying, like, I'm not going to go on strike. I'm not going to sign up for that.
Yo voy a venir a trabajar.
I'm just going to come and work.
Teníamos un trabajo de cómo motivarlos a cada uno de ellos.
But, me and other fellow leaders had a responsibility, a task to get our folks ready.
Específicamente la de una compañera.
One person that comes to mind is a fellow coworker.
Ella es de Rusia.
She's from Russia.
Un día recuerdo que nos encontramos en el ascensor, en el elevador.
And there was one time I was in the elevator with her.
Y me dice, Rosemary, tú no vas a votar para la huelga, ¿verdad?
And she comes up to me and says, Rosemary, you're not going to vote in favor of the strike, are you?
Y yo le dije, yo sí voy a votar por la huelga y quiero que tú también votes por ella.
And I said, of course I'm going to vote yes for the strike, and you should too.
No, Rosemary, yo no voy a votar por la huelga, yo voy a trabajar.
No, Rosemary, I'm not going to vote for the strike. I am going to go to work instead.
Cuando hablé con una de las personas de la Unión
And when I talked to one of the organizers from Local 8,
para ver cómo convencíamos a los compañeros,
we put our heads together to figure out how to move our coworkers to come to this realization that I've come to.
ellos me dieron una idea.
And they gave me an idea.
Vamos a tratarlos de una manera más amistosa,
We're gonna approach this in a friendly way.
porque a veces tal vez yo me ponía a decir, ¿por qué? ¿Por qué? ¿Por qué no vas a votar por la huelga? Esto es un beneficio para ti, para mí.
And initially I'm feeling like, gosh, why aren't you going to actually vote for this? This is so important. This is necessary.
Ahora tenía que hablarles de una manera más amigable.
And I had to take a step back and reframe it and put it in friendlier terms, if you will.
Y otra vez fui donde ella y le explico cuáles las razones por la cual si hubiera una huelga tendríamos que ser partícipes todos.
And so I go back to her and I ask her, what are the reasons that you think we should go on strike for?
Y ya no más hablé con ella.
And just started having a conversation with her.
Un día la encuentro en el comedor
Another day, I found her in the break room
a la hora de lunch
for lunch.
y me dice ella, me pregunta, Rosemary, ¿vas a ir al rally hoy?
And she asks me, are you going to the rally today?
Y yo, ¿tú vas a ir?
And I ask her, are you going?
Ella me dice, of course.
And she says, of course.
Yo no sé quién la motivó,
I don't know who motivated her,
quién la convenció.
who convinced her.
Yo solo sé que a ella, yo le hablé, pero otra persona la convenció.
I just know that I talked to her, and I'm sure other fellow leaders also encouraged and pushed her as well.
Es un trabajo en equipo.
It's all about teamwork.
Todos colaboramos
All of us collaborating together,
y todos pudimos lograr lo que se ha logrado con la nueva contratación en Westing.
and all of us were able to achieve and accomplish what we were able to do and win tremendous things in our contract.
Great, thank you. It's a great example of how you can never give up, and sometimes you don't know what is going to be the thing that tips people into action, but you have to try everything. I just want to ask Sister Jenny a question about the particulars of your fight, because you engaged in an illegal strike, and not just an illegal strike against an employer, but an illegal strike against the combined political and economic establishment of an entire state. And so what were some of the obstacles that you had in waging this fight in the way that you did, and how did you overcome those obstacles?
So our state leadership, we have really good delegates and senators. We have really, really awful ones too. In fact, I don't know how many of you ever follow West Virginia politics, probably not. We are engaged in a battle right now fighting charters and privatization. We took an authorization vote last week. We met today. I sent someone in my place. And it was an overwhelming majority of a yes vote to authorize an action if the conditions of the Senate bill do not change. And so our leadership throughout this whole time has done a lot of things during this time and since then, a lot of retaliatory things. We are a right-to-work state. We were right-to-work, prevailing wage, all of these anti-union things before Janus. It was in West Virginia. And it was in West Virginia because of the dark money that was poured in to West Virginia to replace our allies and to break the unions. And so, I don't know if you followed the race with Patrick Morrissey or not. He ran for Congress. He is our Attorney General, and he was bought and paid for by the Koch brothers to come from New Jersey to upset our then Attorney General, Darryl McGraw, in 2012, to break unions. And so that is what we are up against. And so not only do we have our majority leadership, our Republican leadership, very anti-worker, anti-labor in the past, and anti-public education, but we also had an Attorney General who was saying to us that this was illegal, this was not right, and he was prepared to take action. But because we had this sheer numbers and the solidarity, not just with teachers, but all of our service personnel, all of our bus drivers, cooks, custodians, secretaries, we all walked together. And we also fought for all public employees who could not leave their job. So those public employees being our DHHR workers and our CPS workers who fight for the most vulnerable population who couldn't leave their job, our state troopers, fighting for all of them was how we overcame this hurdle of an illegal strike, okay? What are you gonna do? We have 700 teacher vacancies already. Are you gonna replace us? And so, activating that mindset in people. Are you gonna arrest all of us? But in very few counties, mine maybe is the only one I know of, we had a Board of Education. Our Board of Education was threatening us to go back. And so they were having emergency Board of Education meetings every day during the 9-day walkout. And so our superintendents were forced to shut down the schools for safety, but they could do punitive things to try to break us, to try to make some of us go back. One of those things was the threat of losing our healthcare incentive, which we get like $1,000 at the end of the year to help supplement our insurance, which, by the way, was what we were fighting for. So that was a really real threat. And so what we did to overcome that hurdle is we talked to all of our community members again, and we packed the Board of Education meeting. And so then the very next meeting, they had to hold it in our Performing Arts Center, which is a huge auditorium that our county built, and it was absolutely beautiful. So that morning, we hosted Jim Justice, who was our governor, with the most unfortunate name. And it was just the same song and dance, telling us to go back. And we are a movement of women, right? We're mostly majority of women, and telling us to go back sounded very much like get back in the kitchen to us. And so many of us walked out and left. We drove to Charleston. There was a rally there. We got motivated again, and then we heard that the Board of Education meeting was going to happen, and they were going to implore us and try to bully us to go back. So we flew back to Wheeling, which is a 3-hour drive, but on Jenny time, on my time, it's a lot less than that, especially when you're angry. And in calling these people and networking, when I walked in late with the group of teachers that drove to Charleston and back, there was a sea of red shirts, Red for Ed, community members, pastors, NAACP, principals speaking now, and that's how we overcame that, by being the community, like we talked about first, by being the community and organizing together and realizing that this is our battle.
We'll take questions in a couple minutes. I want to ask Rosemary a question too, and as we sort of move to what are the lessons. We have a duty, all of us as organizers, not just to wage the struggles, but then to teach what we've learned to the next wave of struggle, of people who are in struggle, the next generation, the next group of workers who are thinking of going on strike. And I'm hoping, Rosemary, you could tell us what are like 2 or 3 key lessons that you think are vital from your fight that we need to take forward into future struggles.
Yo creo, ¿verdad?, que con la experiencia que yo he recibido en trabajar, en ser parte de la unión, creo que la experiencia que yo dejaría a los demás sería siempre que pudieran trabajar en equipo, que pudiéramos trabajar unidos.
So one of the biggest takeaways from the experience of going through the strike vote and going through all of the different actions and rallies is again, the emphasis of working as a team.
Que no sientan miedo, tal vez como yo lo sentía antes,
To not feel afraid like I did before.
a expresarse
To express yourself,
cuando sabemos que hay algo que es justo para nosotros, que podamos levantarnos a lograr eso justo para que llegue.
when we know that there is something just out there for ourselves, that we take that initiative to attain it, to go after it.
Yo no sabía de muchas cosas, no tenía conocimiento de lo que traía, por ejemplo, la ley I-124.
For example, I had no idea what benefits there were to the law I-124.
Cuando yo empiezo a ir a estas reuniones, yo me entero de todos los derechos que tenía para mí como trabajadora.
But once I started learning more about it and started getting more involved, I started recognizing and realizing how many more rights I could actually have and that I will have.
Y esto me motivó a mí a saber y conocer más.
And that motivated me to want to know more and to want to share.
Yo creo que esto le serviría. Yo tengo un hijo joven y creo que la lección que yo le enseñaría a él es que nunca se quede callado cuando sienta que es algo injusto que está pasando.
And in thinking about my son, one of the things that I want him to take away, as well as others like him, is to use your voice. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Rosemary. And Jenny, again, what lessons do you think, 2 or 3 lessons from West Virginia?
On a really light note, I learned that teachers, especially elementary teachers and classroom age, the lesson I learned is they come up with some really clever chants and signs. But no, really the lessons that we learned, the biggest thing, the biggest victory that came out of it, and the ripple that it sent across the nation directly after, is that our labor belongs to us. And that's something we never internalized before, and that collectively we can accomplish so many things. And so that really was the monumental victory, not the paltry $2,000 raise for teachers that was eaten up by our, not the promise of a fix of healthcare. That was really the big victory. And also the lessons that we learned were to continue as rank and file members to engage in solidarity unionism and pay it back to the support that we received. And so we had a machinist union go on strike near my home, about half an hour south of us. And so we didn't even have to ask members. We were like, what can we do to help them and their struggle? Unfortunately, it lasted 131 days. A company brought in workers from other countries to try to break them. But we were able to create this movement, this momentum, that we purchased gift cards, gas cards, grocery cards, and eventually stuffed backpacks full of supplies for the children before school started, because they were still on strike when school was starting. And so that's the biggest lesson, is that we can, as rank and file members, push our unions in a more progressive direction, and stand up for social justice issues and to engage in solidarity unionism among our ranks. And we've seen that now come to fruition in West Virginia. The press conference that they had today announcing the authorization of an action if our legislature doesn't come to their senses, is the message that they said was our leadership comes from the members. And so all of our leaders said over and over again, we're going to look to our members for that moment, for when we're going to take an action and what that's going to look like and what we're going to continue to fight for. And that's a big momentum and paradigm shift. And so that is a lesson that we can all continue, that we don't have to be in a particular position. There are just people just like us who can stand up and organize, and it takes just small groups of people organizing together to send a ripple across to make really big changes. And that's something that I think was the biggest lesson from our strike.
Great. Thank you. Do we have time for a few questions? Sure, we do, of course. So we're going to ask people to use the mic. And Bob, are you setting that? So keep your questions short so that we have more time for others to
Speak
ask
into the
as well.
mic.
Yes, this state has a union membership, I gather, of about 10 to 11% of the workforce. And in British Columbia, apparently 30% of the workforce is unionized. And the union people up there are moaning and groaning that it's only 30%. I guess I'm wondering what it would take to, and this is more, I realize this is a brainstorming type question, but what would it take to bring union membership up in this country? Because it's only by taking some action like that that we avoid scenes like this where we've got working people sleeping in tents because even at $15 an hour they have to decide between groceries and rent.
I think what we've seen in recent years is that we've had a decline in unions because of the system that we have in place, because people were put in power to break unions on purpose. West Virginia being a right-to-work state, I've experienced that, and we didn't push back against that, and shame on us. And so I think by learning from our mistakes and recognizing the power that we have in our unions and highlighting the victories that have happened recently is really going to help that. I know I ran for president in my local and won, and I can tell you that our membership is stronger and growing every day, not because of me, but because of the movement, because we now know what that power is and looks like. And so I think that that's important to just keep reminding people. I don't know that there's anything, any magic thing that's going to help bolster that, but I think just reminding people of that is their source of power, their unity, their being unionized is their source of power, and highlighting all of these events across the country, not just with teachers, but with all workers that are winning big victories.